And welcome into Facebook Live or Pressbox Live on Facebook Live. Stan the Fan from Pressbox and PressBoxOnline.com. Gary Stein is my co-host there, wearing the UA shirt, Under Armour shirt.
Yep.
And joining us is this guy that I haven't seen since before the pandemic started. That's Jimmy Patsos, the former head coach at Loyola, Siena, and a longtime assistant with Gary Williams down at the University of Maryland. Jimmy, which was the best of those three jobs?
You know, they all had their moments. You know, we won the CBI at Siena. We beat Fresno State in a 2 out of 3. It was the only time I ever played that. Went to the finals of the conference tournament, lost Iona in overtime, heartbreaking. Remember, the MAC is a league that only one team's going to the NCAA. You have to win your tournament. Loyola was just a tremendous family experience. What a great place. Loyola, I'd send my kids to Loyola. You know, that's where if I could tell my daughter where to go to school or whatever, it would be Loyola. Loyola's a great school. It's a great community. I love Charlie Toomey. It was great because lacrosse was good. At a small school, you need something besides basketball. You have lacrosse. You were great in the media. I mean, my wife still has my Greyhound, the crazy Greyhound cover you put up of me. And being part of this community to build a program was just tremendous. I lived in Canton in Tony Saragusa's house, who I just saw my first year and a half. Went out every night, gained 10 pounds and lost 10,000, I used to say. Baltimore was so great because the Orioles were still rolling. The Ravens clearly, owned the town. But the Orioles were still good. And just to get people excited about basketball in Baltimore was such a challenge, but it was good. And then Pat Kennedy came and Todd was at Morgan and we played UMBC on TV. Masson put us on. It was such an exciting run. Looking back, probably biggest regret was leaving Loyola. I should have stayed at Loyola. And you make coaching decisions and mistakes and you think you can go to the next level, or I should have stayed at Loyola because...
When you say that, though, Jimmy, didn't Loyola change what conference they were in?
They were, but that wouldn't matter. You would have had to get more academic kids. Yes, you couldn't take second chance kids, but the Patriot League's a really good league. Bucknell's really good. Colgate, Boston U, Navy's in it. American's been good. You look back and you say, what should I have done? Hey, we all got what ifs, but I wish I'd stayed because Baltimore's such a great community. I love Charlie Toomey, Jen Adams, the women's lacrosse coach. But Loyola, we were doing radio and TV. We had the thing rolling. And, it only has 2,500 at Reach, so you can get people there in the winter. I love Maryland. Maryland's like, I bleed red because of Gary. And Maryland and the University of Maryland, I took classes there, graduate classes. Walt Williams is, still my stockbroker. Maryland's just in my blood. But Loyola was the funnest project. Now, it was like dog years there. It took years off my life because it was 1 in 27 and no one was going to games and the MAC was really good. And we're playing on Friday nights against Bobby Gonzalez in Manhattan. And Iona went to Jeff Ruland and Kevin Willard, who's at Seton Hall, a lot of great coaches. But it was such an exciting thing to see Baltimore get behind you. And I don't think I cherished the value of that enough,
At the time.
I was a high school coach. I coached Lawrence Moten at Archbishop Carroll for 2 years, Charlie Harrison, who went to Wake. And that was a great experience. Got to start a summer league. I knew who Ray Mullis was. I met him. And you learn some different things about high school. You thought you had all the answers. Well, you went to high school and we played Cardozo the first game and Moochie Norris, who went to the NBA's on the team. And you played DeMatha and they have all these guys. You learn about coaching, really coaching, not because it's not as much recruiting in high school, but coaching and managing kids' schedules and the recruiting process of where they should go. But, highlight of my life was working for Gary Williams. Everybody knows that. 13 years at Maryland. Starts with Walt Williams. It ends with DJ Strawberry winning. DJ Strawberry missed a layup to beat Syracuse in the round of 32 in Denver was my last game, but we won the ACC tournament in 2004. Juan and Steve win the national title. You have Steve Francis, 11 straight NCAAs, and had a lot to do with people like Terry Aronson and Bruce Laird and meeting people in Baltimore because you had to get Keith Booth, you had to get Rodney, you had to get you guys back. And I know the Wade thing was tough. I won't speak to that. Coach Wade's been nothing but nice to me. But there was some animosity in Baltimore and going to Cal Ripken's, record-breaking game, watching Steve Bisciotti buy the Ravens and playing in Memorial. Baltimore was such a big part of the University of Maryland's growth. And a lot had to do with Keith Booth, the player, and then Rodney Elliott, the player. And then we played in the Baltimore Arena. We played UMass in the Baltimore Arena. We played Iowa in a Big Ten matchup in the Baltimore. We played Billy Tubbs in Oklahoma. We played big games to come up here. And it was part of the growth process. I was a DC guy at the beginning because of Carroll High School and going to Catholic U, but I quickly became a Baltimore guy. There's a reason I still live here. I love Baltimore. I live in Mount Vernon. I'm looking at the train station. I'm looking at St. Francis right now. I just
Can we let Gary get a question?
no question. You asked me
No
about my
questions
road.
tonight.
I'm just letting
Hey.
people know this is
All
my
right, go ahead.
this is my road, and it ended in Baltimore. And that's the headquarters of Under Armour. And I worked for the Wizards, but the Bullets started in Baltimore. And it's been a great run, and Baltimore's been a huge part of it.
Jimmy, let me ask you while you're reminiscing about the days. There are a lot of great games, obviously. One game in particular, though, stands out to me, and I was there for the game, and that was the game against Davidson when Steph Curry, you did a very controversial plan for that game, approach to that game. Steph Curry was obviously going to be an NBA player. Everybody knew how great he was. He was already great, okay? And your plan, your approach was to double team him basically for the entire game and play 4-on-3 the rest of the way for everybody else. It worked. You held them scoreless, but you lost the game. Just go back to that day and talk about that approach and what made you get to that.
Yeah, it's a good question. And it's not just about, hey, this wasn't a joke. We had beaten James Madison the night before.
Right.
But we were able to scout because the NIT went to two teams. It was Davidson host. It was James Madison, us, and I think Florida Atlantic with Mike Jarvis from GW. We had beaten James Madison, but I got to scout Curry up close. I said, man, he's way better than I thought. Long arms, big hands. Reminded me of Steve Blake. In other words, you didn't realize how good Steve Blake was. You'd say, oh, some white guy, skinny guy, he's all right. No. When you watched him in person, you said he's going to play in the NBA for 10 years. Long arms, big hands, quick with the ball, could score. Curry, clearly a better, all-star Hall of Famer. But I noticed how good he was, and they were well coached. So we wanted to surprise him.
Who was their head coach?
Bob McKillop, who's a good friend of mine,
Yep.
tremendous guy at Davidson. And I met Steph many times. Del Curry's great. We were up like 11-4 and like 17-11 if you check the box. So it was working. I used to tell our players, you got to stick with the plan. Stick with your plan. Graduate. Stick with your plan. Do a summer internship. Stick with your off-season condition. Don't abandon the plan. And so the players at halftime, now we're down about 15 at half. Him and McKillop outsmart me. All the credit goes to Steph. Instead of pouting or taking bad shots, he was calm, cool, and collected. He went in the corner. So now my guys couldn't recover and help because he was in the corner, and he just passed out. And they had a couple guys make threes that hadn't been making threes. It's not like we were giving them up. We were scrambling around, but they put him in the corner. They figured it out, and they blew us out in the second half. And at halftime, I said, fellas, we probably rolled the dice, did the best we could, but we might want to go back and try and play him straight up. And unfortunately, being the dummy that I am, I listened to the players. Don't ever listen to the players. The players are like, it's working. They're going to start missing because the guys that were making shots really weren't their stars. They had a couple other good players, but it wasn't even them. They're like 4th and 5th and 6th and 7th men were making threes. And they said, stick with it. Well, it didn't work. I walked off the court. I said, hey, you outsmarted us, but history will say we held them scoreless. At least we tried. That's the only way we could win. We were coming off playing the night before, beating James Madison. Jamal Barney had gotten hurt, our best player. We rolled the dice. But that's when I knew Steph Curry was going to be something really special because no pouting, great attitude, went to the corner. McKillop was fine after the game. The kid didn't bitch. And now he's, a tremendous young man. But he's like, okay, so he just passed the ball. You figured ego might take over, not with him. He just wanted his team to win, and he went on to the next game.
Hey, Jimmy, also another great game. And just to get your thoughts, I think it was the next year after the Davidson game, you guys go to Indiana and beat them. I know a coach always believes his team can win, even though in the back of his mind, he knows he's playing a giant or whatever. But how do you, or is it difficult to transfer that optimism to your players when they go into a place like, Indiana, wherever they play, a big time team?
It's a great question, Gary. And you know what? I always wanted to play a team. And this is what I mean about Loyola. And Joe Boylan, the AD, who should be in Loyola Hall of Fame, he hired Skip Prosser, he helped me, but what he did building the lacrosse and Ridley. Joe Boylan and I felt like we need a little bit of money, but let's have some fun and get some fans with us and get some recognition. So we wanted to play a team that had a national championship banner hanging. So I played Georgetown, Michigan State. I played Kansas twice, I think Kentucky. We'd always gone where a team had a national championship banner hanging. So we go to Indiana. And we were pretty good. We were really good. We had our young team coming that was going to win in 2012 and go to the NCAA tournament. we just went in and played well, but they had given us a check. It's weird. They gave us a check before the game. I said, fellas, you know how hard it is to win when you get one of these before the games? Because the referees know you got a check. Everybody knows you got a check. And all I really tried to do in those, Gary, was definitely try to compete. And like I want to go into the game being like tied or within reach at halftime. And then you knew in the second half they were going to make adjustments. They were more athletic. But yeah, it's not that I didn't think we could win. And Indiana was, Crean had just taken over. We were tied with Michigan State at halftime, tied with Kentucky at halftime. So, we played Duke as well. NC State too, who we lost to at the buzzer. We missed a shot at the buzzer. But you have to compete in the first half or those things will get out of hand. And that's where I geared all my – I would change defenses. I would do something like double team or play a 1-3-1 when I hadn't played it all year just to try to keep us in the game in the first half and then get something out of it because you don't want to demoralize the kids. But I always felt this, and you know this, Stan. Stan and I talk about whether it's Josh being in – in other words, Dead Poets Society, and this is Josh Charles, who's a friend of ours, an actor. There are moments that you remember in your career, but you have to move on from them and do regular work, right? But like Dead Poets Society will always be what Josh Charles, is known for.
Yeah.
And then, of course, nobody loved The Good Wife more than me. I love all Josh's stuff. But you have to kind of grasp onto something. And I felt for our players, other than the MAC, it was going on a trip to Kentucky with all our boosters, chartering to Kansas, playing at Duke. Every Loyola kid that I coach sends me a picture because his framed jersey has a couple of pictures in it. And it's Kansas and Kentucky and it's Duke. And they say that was so great. And for the next generation, they're watching Calipari and Bill Self and Mike Krzyzewski coach. And that's what the Indiana thing was. And when Brett Harvey hit a 3 to win it, you have to get a little lucky in those games too. But it's just one. And man, I remember Gary Williams never lost those games because you know which one he lost, Stan, was to Coppin State.
Yep. And that's who I was just going to ask you a question. It's funny you mentioned Coppin State.
He never forgot that. We didn't lose any of those for 10 years after that.
Right. But I was going to ask you how much respect you had because you were at least trying to do something, like you say, give the kids the experience of going to Kentucky or Indiana. Fang over at Coppin, who I know you knew pretty well back in those days, he didn't have the kids and their parents coming to go to Kentucky for a game. He was just going all across the country. How did you watch him from afar and have a lot of respect for Fang?
I love Fang. Great guy from Philly. You know what? When I got up here, good. I could do this all night long. You want to have a beer? We can do this all night long. Fang was great because he's like, Jimmy, I'm older and I see what you're trying to do. Yeah, cheers to that. And Fang was like, Todd was new and Pat Kennedy was Pat Kennedy. I like Coach Kennedy, probably a little slicker than me, but that's all right. But Fang was like, Jimmy, whatever you want to do with this Baltimore thing to try and all play like the Big Five,
right?
Or get on TV, like I'll open at your place or have a little tournament. He's like, I'm all for it. You have my vote. Yeah, you got to go do the work because I got to play 9 money games. 9. Right. Now, I don't think that's fair. I don't care what economic situation the school's in. Playing 5 or 6, 9's just to beat down on your kids. That's when you should play a couple Division III teams. Ryan Odom plays a couple Division IIIs. When I was at Loyola, you were not allowed. That's just on what Fang went through and having to come back playing Oklahoma and Kansas and not having that love and support of the majority or playing. Yeah. See, we planned the trips. These were like family trips. Mm-hmm. He was just going Monday to Wednesday to college. He had to get the big money from football schools.
Yep.
And then come back and still have his team ready to go in January. It was one of the great coaching jobs. Fang, wonderful man. We always played. We had some great TV games. And he just, 9's too many, though. Gary and Stan, 9 money games, that's no fun. 1 or 2's good. Playing in a tournament's good. Then I wanted to play all the Baltimore teams. I just wanted to figure out how to have a cup. If everybody played once, because Morgan and Coppin play in December because of the football game. But my idea was 2 points for a home win, 3 for a road. You got to have 2 at home and 2 on the road. And I won't name names, but there was 1 or 2 coaches that were not cooperative or were like, I'm not playing if I don't get my 2 home games and pick the opponent. And I was like, I was brash. Screw you. I did the work. Fang's on board. We got Masson involved. You have to give a little bit. And there was 1 or 2 coaches each year. Or 1 coach, 2 different guys each year that just wouldn't play along. And it's one of my big regrets because what I thought, Stan, was you could play everybody and then go have a lunch down at Rusty Scupper, bring the kids. Here's the winner of the cup. kind of fun. But I like to have fun. I wanted to motivate and I thought a lunch over Christmas to say this is the Baltimore, like the Big Five, but there's no governing body and we're not in the same league, so it was tough. But Fang Mitchell, quality guy, great coach.
You know, along these lines, the idea of playing local games, do you think the pandemic and what it might do to scheduling might make it more a marriage of convenience now to play all the local teams?
Love that. You're a smart man, Stan. Great term.
Well, actually, we had on Brian Barrio about 3 weeks ago, 4
He's a
weeks
good
ago.
guy from UMBC.
UMBC, and he said
guy.
that he mentioned that. So
Look, what you
I wasn't that smart.
Well, no, you're pretty, yeah. But Brian's a great guy. He's going to do a great job with Ryan over there. Yeah, they're not the uniqueness is that you're not in the same conferences. So Loyola,
Yep,
Towson, and Pat Skerry's done a really good job. They have the arena that's probably set up best for it, or UMBC, because those are two brand new arenas. You know, when they have hotels right around them, because UMBC's got the airport. I'm thinking like get the kids in a hotel, bring in Mount St. Mary's. Now it's nice if you have a money team like Maryland do it. And then you can play everybody because someone's got to pay the bills. And for those of you listening that don't understand how money games work, it's like $70,000 to $100,000 Coppin State gets for every game. That pays. Juan Nixon's taking that hit and paying for all sports, women's volleyball, and that's all right. The money should be split. I'm down with Title IX.
Right.
Is the money going to be there, Stan, or you do it just for UMBC, Towson, Morgan with Kevin Brodus, a new coach? And then them and Coppin, they could play one league game there, but it's not that tricky. But you probably have to bring in the Mount. I don't know if Annapolis and Navy wants to come up because they're in Loyola's league.
Right.
I just like it if they would do it. To me, Stan, I would like to see Georgetown and Maryland get involved with GW and George Mason because they got some money. You know, you got Big East, 100 grand, Big Ten, 100 grand, A10, you want to be big, 60 grand, GW, 60 grand, George Mason. You guys now help Mount St. Mary's, Navy. I would do the DMV, maybe 2 bubbles.
Okay,
but I want a big team in there so you have a chance. If I'm Loyola, I want to play Georgetown. But that way Georgetown can at least pay for the schools. You're not going to give them a check anymore, but that's expensive to play 3 games and be in a hotel. I want the 2 biggies to pay and the 2 mediums and the A10 to pay, and then UMBC, Loyola, Mount St. Mary's, Navy, Howard's in it. You all get to come for free. That's what I would do. 3 or 4 games. I think that'd be great.
Mm-hmm. Jimmy, do you miss coaching?
You know, I miss practice. I miss the kids. I miss the kids, the young. I miss the young men. I've had some fantastic friendships that I still carry today from coaching. You know, my relationships at Maryland, God, I was practically their age, so that was totally different then. I miss the relationship. I miss my cultural trips. You know, playing Pittsburgh and going to the Andy Warhol Museum. Mm-hmm. You know, going to Kansas City and taking them to Satchel Paige's grave. Going to Buffalo and taking them to Rick James's grave. By the way, Rick James from Super Freak. Because I have this thing about, you know, hey, remember how great these people were. They still passed away. Like it's going to be your ball's going to deflate in basketball. Then it's going to be business. Then life's over. Make the most. Enjoy your friendships. Be a giver, not a taker. You know, listen to other people's stories. Find out where people are from. You know, find out what religion or background people have. I had a lot of different. I love my Baltimore kids, RJ and Dylan Cormier, and these guys that came from Baltimore taught me about the West Side, the East Side. Well, I taught them about different stuff. Going to Guggenheim, they called it the Teacup Museum. That was the fun stuff of coaching for me. You know, if I ever go back, probably be like a Division III job, something like that. But I also like working in the shoe business with Under Armour. That's a very interesting thing. You know, I've been off for the summer because of the pandemic and everything's been closed. I love doing the Wizards pre and post game. I did some Wizards radio. You do that with
Comcast, right?
NBC Washington.
MSNBC Washington.
And it's funny because they like me because I'm the Baltimore guy, because this is where the Bullets, who turned into the Wizards, came from. A lot of younger people don't even remember that the Bullets with great teams, Wes Unseld and, you know, Gus, and they had a great backcourt. Right?
I was a ball boy for the Bullets in 1965. That was the year Mike Farmer was hired, and he got fired after his first 5 games.
5 games.
5 games.
And then Gene Shue came, right?
Actually, Buddy Jeanette was the general manager, and Buddy coached the team for about 20 games. Then they brought Shue in.
And then did they go to the finals in Baltimore, Stan?
Yeah.
I don't think they went to the finals in Baltimore.
Yes, they did. Wait a minute.
Because the Celtics were really good then. I know they went to the finals down in the Cap One when they USA
I'm trying
Arena.
to remember now if they went to the finals. I'm not sure.
Well, I know. I don't know if they went to the finals. I know
Wait a minute. Who did they play?
sometimes.
Weren't they still the Bullets when they lost to the Bucks? They were still the
Yes,
Bullets,
they were
weren't
still
they?
the Bullets.
Yeah,
I don't know that was the finals, or maybe it was the finals. You're
it
right.
was a
And who was
finals.
the backcourt? Who was the backcourt?
Well,
here?
the backcourt that when I was there as a ball boy was Kevin Lockery and Don Ole.
Okay.
And then the next season, they lost the coin flip and got Wes Unseld. Then the next year, they lost the coin flip and got Earl Monroe instead of
They got
Jimmy Walker. Yeah, they got Wes instead of Elvin Hayes, and they got Monroe instead of Jimmy Walker.
And then Hayes ends up playing with them, right?
And then that's when they won the championship.
So, anyways, I do a lot of that. I go to games like Auburn. I go around to the country. I go to a lot of high school games. They call that today's term of grassroots is high school and AAU. I do college. A little bit of our pro guys, not too much camps in the summer. But NBC's been fantastic. Chris Miller's a great guy. He's our host. But I get to do it before the game, sometimes at half and after the game. And then doing some radio. I did 2 radios with Dave Johnson this year. During the bubble, it was fantastic to do radio. He's a real pro. You jump in and do the whole game. I sub for Glenn Consor. So it's been a different look. Do I miss coaching? I think we all miss coaching a little. I will jump into the NBA right now and say I don't miss coaching when the Celtics, who have been fantastic, and Brad Stevens, a class guy, loses 2 games in the fourth quarter to the really good Heat, and Twitter blows up and is calling for his head.
Yeah.
The Celtics come back and win game 3. I mean, really, like the whole city of Boston, and it's not. It's not the city of Boston.
Spoelstra's a hell of a coach, isn't he?
He is, but so is Brad Stevens.
So is Brad Stevens.
Deserve to have 5 hours of Twitter calling for his head to be in the guillotine.
Right.
But welcome to coaching today. That's what I don't miss about coaching. The unrealistic people that get to press send from an anonymous computer or just tweet about you, which I don't mind that hey, heavy on the shoulders that wear the crown, but it's so fickle minute to minute that coaching's not as fun as it used to be. I'm a happy guy, glasses 3/4 full, maybe 90% full. And I work for Gary, who's very different, but we were able to connect. But coaching's about teaching and giving kids an opportunity, and the Loyolas of the world and Siennas and even Maryland to a degree. Because, hey, Maryland's got 1 or 2 pros on their team max right now that sticks left. But their parents think they're going to be pros, and everyone thinks that Tersh should win every game. And so coaching's great, but it's not as fun as it used to be.
Jimmy, let me ask you, the NBA with the bubble, from a coach's perspective, no more home field advantage. Do you think home field advantage in the NBA is a big deal?
Gary, unbelievable question. Really, I'm being serious. Like, that's a great question because there's no way the Celtics lose the first 2 games if they're the home team.
Correct.
Because to me, the biggest thing is there's no distractions, whether it's family or whatever. So the level of play has been good. You get rest. You're not traveling. We all have lives. Look, I coached really hard, but sometimes you had a bad day, or my mother was coming into town, or my brother and sister were here, or my wife was great. Was just that could be all put into a compartment and placed over here. These guys are just balling. They're playing, they're practicing, they have their video. It's tough on them for the families. I don't think the bubble, they should ever do it again, but it was the perfect thing to do this year. I think LeBron should get a bunch of credit and Adam Silver for putting it all together. The play's been great, the focus, the competitiveness, but no referees being influenced by home crowds, no crowds in the background, and I'm waving my hands for those of you that can't see. On free throws, it's a great point, Gary, and I think that's why like the Heat beat the Bucks. I don't know if the Heat would have beat the Bucks if they had to go to Milwaukee. They were down 2-0. Now they're, Greek Freaks got everything going. I love Giannis Antetokounmpo. Now they're just D'ing them up. You can hear the coaches coaching more. There's not lost in the noise. I think the neutrality of the game has proved beneficial for basketball people to watch. I think it's been very interesting. I think it's probably the biggest component and key factor of what's going on.
Jimmy, the death recently of John Thompson, who I guess we'd all agree was sort of the first Black coach that was really part of the activism, and what's going on today with, the players sitting out with Black Lives Matter. What are your thoughts on that?
He was always nice to me, even though I was a Maryland guy. because I coached at Carroll High School where he went.
Because
In
you didn't work with
1955.
Lefty. You didn't work with Lefty. That's why it was nice to you.
Well, him and Gary, no, they were friends, but they respected each other. Yeah, him and Lefty, him and Morgan didn't get along that well. I don't know really why, but I never heard that story. But John Thompson was one of the few guys that could get DC and Baltimore kids to play together. He really was. He got combination DC and Baltimore. Great man. He was at Carroll High School in 55. Some consider the greatest high school team ever. George Leftowich was on the team. Monk Malloy for Notre Dame, John Thompson. He's Mount Rushmore. I had Big House Gaines, John Thompson, John Chaney for sure.
Yeah.
Then you can pick Nolan Richardson or Tubby Smith, African-American coaches that won the NCAA. But more importantly, he just was tough on his kids, fair but firm. Protected them but exposed them in a good way. Gave him opportunities, and he saved Allen Iverson's life. But he's produced great people, but he was great for the game. He was DC. He had that toughness, super intellectual guy. I love JT3, his son. It's amazing because Lute Olson passed.
Yeah.
That night, they showed Iowa play Georgetown in the Elite Eight in 1980 to go to the Final Four. And Lute Olson comes back and beats John. 2 days later, he passes.
Yeah.
Now, those are two lions of our industry. One that's in the West Coast, takes Arizona from nowhere. And John Thompson, people don't remember that Georgetown was like a total afterthought basketball. They weren't even
No question about it. No question.
So then in the same weekend, you lose Lute Olson and John Thompson, Hall of Famers that did it their different ways at hard places. But what John did for the BLM, and I want to see more black coaches. One of my things is every staff should have more black. You have a director of operations and 3 assistants and a head coach. That's 5 positions. We need to mandate that 40% of those positions are with African Americans. You have to get. He was really doing that. John Chaney was really doing that and tough on his kids. And I'm looking for the next African American that's going to be the real leader of the coaches. Because Tubby is at High Point still coaching, but he was at Kentucky in a class act from Georgia. And Nolan Richardson, who won it all, because it matters when you win it all or go to Final Fours. And I think there needs to be another person to step up soon, and we really need one because John, not coaching was one thing, but passing away was another because he was just such a lion and such a great person. And I would have loved to have heard what he said about what's going on in the country right now, because he was sick down the stretch.
And what's your take on the part that the NBA players are playing in this, showing their activism side?
I mean, I'm not close enough to this. I can't tell somebody what they think or don't think. I'm not a political guy in terms of, I'm not in their situation. I just think it's good to listen to what they have to say, try to learn more.
Well, how would you have been today if you were coaching a team that was predominantly African American?
Same way I always was, but look, today's different anyways. I stopped coaching 3 years ago and it feels like 10.
10, right.
You got to be careful. You can't I probably yelled too much. My guys knew I loved them. I should have yelled more in practice and less in the games. I didn't yell that much during practice. But I was a good friend to the players and a mentor and all that. All my kids were, hey, Sienna's APR was a disaster when I got there. Their academic situation, we made that tops in the league, fixed their locker room, did all this stuff. You don't win enough games, you're out of here. This is coaching, okay? I understand that. I'm a man, I get it. But we're here to make these guys be successful in life. And sometimes there's some schools that really get it, like Loyola. Father Lanane really got that. Gary Williams was clearly about that. But that was also guys that want to go to the pros. We started to experience Joe Smith leaving early, Steve Francis. There's millions of dollars at stake. Loyola was the perfect place for the vision of you're here to play basketball, get a free education, but take advantage of your opportunity. They had the right mindset and right ideology. What would I say to players today? You have to have a voice. You got to vote. Definitely pick what you want on the back. Don't just pick anything. Pick what matters. I marched with the Wizards down there, but I'm not black. You guys are young African-American males. You have to have a voice. You tell me what's going on. Tell me how I can get better. I would ask, how can I get better? Is there anything I should be doing different? I've gone to your homes. I was a guy that liked to go into their neighborhoods. Hey, I coached a lot of really wealthy players that were African-American. This is the scope we coach in. But there's a lot of tough situations. And I don't know what it's like to be pulled over by a police officer at 1 a.m. because you were leaving the gym. You had your basketball, you were shooting at midnight. So I think you got to listen a lot. You got to learn from them, but you got to hear what the players and that community has to say. And I think LeBron's done a tremendous job I think I'm really glad they played. Maybe they shouldn't have played. There were those. I don't have a voice in that. But I was happy that they decided not to play to show a stance.
Yeah.
I think you get more done playing. And with the pandemic going on with BLM and everything, you need the games. It's like my favorite thing. It's soothing for me. But that message needs to keep going. We got to get better. We got to get better as a society. This is only the beginning.
But Jimmy, let me ask you on that note. It almost used to be like separation between church and state. Politics, way back in the day, never crossed over into sports, it seemed. I mean, once in a while it did. The Olympics, we know John Smith, John Carlos,
I was only 2 years old, but like by the time I was 6 or 7, I knew what that meant.
Right. But for the most part, though, and Stan and I have done talk radio for years, you didn't talk about politics during a sports radio talk show. Politics weren't evident on the court or in the stands, whatever, etc. But it's a totally different world today. So my question to you is just as a general philosophy, are you okay with politics seeping into sports like it's seeping into everywhere now? Or would you as a fan, and maybe even as a coach, whatever, just like to see, because fans, when they turn on a basketball game, want to watch basketball. That's what they want to do. They want to take the next 2 hours and be entertained by a basketball game, a football game, a baseball game. Are you okay with this seepage?
Well, it brings us back to John Thompson. There are things that have to be recognized. Look, sports isn't the way it used to be. It's the 50-year anniversary of Monday Night Football. When Howard Cosell, that wasn't a big deal. All of a sudden, that's how everyone found out John Lennon died. Like, sports is what it is. It's gotten so big. These players are not just players. They're leaders. They're world figures. I think John Thompson said it best when, I didn't want to cross the line until you started to talk about Prop 48 and African-American kids not being able to go to these schools and make them go to junior college. Not that there's anything wrong with junior college, but there's different paths. John Thompson's you're going to take away the opportunity for the finest educations in the world for these young black men that I coach because of Prop 48, because some lady in admissions doesn't want to, judge them except for on their test scores. I thought he made a great statement. I thought that was an important statement John Thompson made then. And that was one of the things that opened up the world of we can make a difference through sports. But yeah, I think it's all connected. I think it's a really important thing. To not play could be the biggest statement of all, but I, like you, want to watch. I don't think that's necessary. But it's just it is what it is. But to get a real answer on that, I would ask a lot of the athletes. I got a poster right now of Muhammad Ali. I got Muhammad Ali's gloves, Muhammad Ali's books, Muhammad Ali's shorts are behind me framed. He didn't box because of Vietnam. He was right, and he was right. You see,
I do this all the time, Jimmy. The guy you're looking at up there, Gary Stein.
Yeah.
His dad owned the grocery store next to the 5th Street Gym in Miami, Florida. When Muhammad Ali was Cassius Clay and used to run in the morning, he would come by to get orange juice at his grocery store.
Is that when he beat Sonny Liston after that?
Yeah, right after around that. That was about 10.
Sonny Liston.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. But it is. So in other words, Ali showed you the power of that. And he was right. We didn't know we were being lied to about Vietnam. My wife's Vietnamese. I've been to Vietnam. They don't even talk about the war anymore over there because it's, the generations have gone. But that was a big impact on this country. And Muhammad Ali was the first. He did it. So it's going to keep happening. But now with Twitter and everything, and all the social media, it's in the forefront. But LeBron James, to me, is a great leader. He's a great leader of men in society and all that. And so if he's using sports but I still want to see the games too, Gary. When the games begin, the games begin. But there's a mix of it, and I'm not an expert to say whether to do it or not. But if it's bringing it to the forefront and things are going to get better, then that matters.
Hey, I got to spin back before we get out of here. I got to get back to Gary Williams for a second. It's kind of like wanting to know what the catcher and the manager say to the pitcher on the pitcher's mound. When Gary would go absolutely berserk on the sidelines, and then he would get down on his knees and start yelling and screaming at the assistant coaches. What was he actually screaming about? Was it the play, or was it an official's call? What was he so berserk
a little of everything. He was just trying not to yell at the players, which is hard. because he was good in timeouts. See, great teacher. Gary knew what he was doing. People thought, oh, he's crazy. Like I was a little crazier than him, but I still knew what I was doing. I was thinking that guy was compartmentalized and right on. But he would say some stuff like, I told you should have stayed after and worked on free throws if the guy meant a free throw, or I told you not to say anything to that ref because that's why he gave us a bad call, which wasn't the case. But sometimes he would be interesting, Stan, and be like, and you were late on September 10th for the meeting, And I'm like, September 10th? It's like January. I don't even know he had this like computer mind, Sometimes it would be about you. Sometimes it would be about player you're in charge of. But it was brilliant because he was staying fired up and getting it out. And I'd rather have him yell at me and us win than yell at the players and lose.
I dream of seeing Larry Brown coach again someday, either at a high school level or small college.
Great coach.
Would you ever see Gary coming back at all, or is it's over for him?
No, Gary wouldn't come back. I think he thought about it. A couple years after he was done, there were some schools that called him.
Right.
And, I'm not talking out of school. I thought GW could have hired him and they were going to look at him because there was a lot of people in his community that it's just good enough. He could fill the arena and all that. But he's a Maryland guy. He left. He wanted to go out on top. I don't speak for Gary Williams, but
yeah,
he went out on top. He had the Grievous run, which was great. And remember, kids, see, here's what happened a little bit, Stan. This is just me. This is not Gary Williams speaking, but this is me speaking for my dearest friend and mentor and father figure. When guys were like leaving our program that really were going to get drafted, that was one thing. But then the foolishness of agents and the wrong players leaving and guys transferring that had no business I think Gary was smart not to try to manage that. Remember, when he left, Mike Krzyzewski didn't have a one and done.
Right.
Duke had all 4-year players. I like what Jay Wright does. I like the 2- and 3-year players. I get it. You got to go make your money, but that way you really get to know the student body. You learn about, get really good friends, plus you get a little better. You're prepared to stay in the league for 10 years. I think Gary just knew that he had a really good, Grievous was special, 4-year player, All-American. They, lose to Michigan. The guy ducks at Michigan State. Draymond Green ducks. The player panics and throws it to Draymond Green. He ducks, it goes over his head, and I think Harris catches it and makes a 3. Otherwise, they go to the Sweet 16. And Michigan State ends up going to the Final Four that year because there'd been another upset. He had a really good run, and I think he said, this is enough.
Yeah.
Because there was going to be another recruiting process to go through. He's going to coach the way he coached. He's going to demand perfection in practice. But you see, and he was right. There's a million kids transferring that shouldn't transfer. There's a million kids I laugh when I see the list of kids declaring for the draft. Leaving Wake Forest for the draft? You're not even good enough to start away. You're not even good in the ACC. These are several kids I saw over the last few years. Check them out. You'll know the names I'm saying. Like, I don't think he tolerated fools very much. Like, if you said, I got to leave, Gary's like, hey, Joe Smith, you got to leave. Wilcox, hey, you played great. We won it all. At 25, you shouldn't leave, but now you should. Jordan Williams, of course you shouldn't have left. It didn't work.
Right.
But Steve Francis, you have to leave. He's a very honest guy, but I think that combined with I didn't give enough shots and my mother wants to talk to you after the game because I didn't get enough shots and I can't get a shoe deal like, LeBron. What? I applaud him for saying and being a visionary of seeing that was going to get worse, get more involved, and saying, I'm not going to deal with it.
I got one more question for you, then I'll let Gary Stein finish up the questions. What happened with the recruitment of Tamir Goodman? What did Gary miss? Did he not see the kid play enough to?
Yeah, he couldn't really see him play. There wasn't as much AAU. So he was playing against lesser competition. And I'm not throwing Billy under the bus. Billy Hahn led the charge, saw the kid play. The kid dropped 50.
Yep.
And then, he
was an entertaining ball player, but
he was an entertaining ball player. He ended up playing a top. It's not like he went to Hood College. No offense to Hood or Goucher Division III. I played Division III. It's not a criticism of that. He ended up going to Towson, so he was a pretty good player. Then he got a little exposed in the summer, and sometimes when the heat comes, you got to see how a kid responds. Like Gary loved Juan Dixon because they were down 20 to St. Francis, and Juan kept diving for balls and fighting back. And then the next game, he beat him. Like, I think it was a lot for, and I don't blame Tamir. It was a lot for Tamir to handle. Then he got a little exposed, and then either you're going to fight back or you're going to say, I've kind of had it. And I just wasn't sure that Gary, and I went up and saw him too. And I said, there's a lot of pressure on this kid. I'm not quite sure if he's good enough. And recruiting's that way. You know, guys, remember, we don't see these kids every day. The NCAA only allows us to go to 5 games. Tamir had 2 fantastic games. He was making threes from 50 feet. And that happens. But I think that solved itself. It wasn't us. It just ended. He wasn't quite good enough.
Yeah. Gary, finish up with Mr. Patsos here.
Yeah, final question, Jimmy. So I asked you before if you missed coaching, and you gave us a great answer. In that answer, you had a little bit of you gave it a couple seconds. You said, maybe I'd consider a Division III job. And my question to you is, because you love the game, like, why Division III? Why not Division I?
Well, no, good. Real quick, I played Division III. I got an opportunity by playing for Jack Bruin at Catholic U. Our rival was Hopkins. Beat Andy Enfield every time, and he knows it. That's my buddy.
One of the greatest free throw shooters in history
Of all time.
I hit a free throw at Hopkins to beat him. Those friendships we met. I met Dave Petramala because it was different then. After the game, you know, we're like, hey, brother, what's up? Hey, the Orioles are down the street. I like baseball. There's none in Washington. Can I come up? Andy Enfield's like, come on up. We become friends. I meet Dave Petramala. I go to a Hopkins lacrosse game. I have no idea what's going on. And I find out this is the best, you know, this is the Boston Celtics of lacrosse. Like, those friendships and relationships. Look, other than Duncan Robinson, who plays for the Heat, there's no Division III players. Terry Porter. Hey, I'd be a Division I assistant. I'll go back and be a Division I head coach maybe one day. It's just, that's a different path. That's a great path. They pay you a lot more money. It's all fun glamour, but it's not good if you don't win, or an administration can turn on you. I'm not going to get into any of the things that can happen at the highest level, because we accept that heavy on the shoulders that wear the crown. I'm no problem with that. Division III is about, and I say that, Division II is fine too, it's just not around here. Whether it's Hood, Goucher, Coach Stewart at Stevenson does a great job. Hopkins, I mean, Josh Lefter is one of the best coaches I know, seriously, at Hopkins. He won't be there long because he's got that, he's on the way up. Me, I'm the young grandfather. I want to tell those kids, don't make the mistakes I made, but what a great opportunity. You're still a college basketball player. Now get to class. You know, I don't want to hear from your uncle about how many shots you got because the salary cap just went up in the NBA. Get out of here, dude. Like, just go to class, play ball. This is just a part of your growth. It's pretty, Division I basketball is big business. Let's put it out there, our friends. NFL is big business, you know, but NBA and college basketball combined are probably second behind NFL, you know, and you know, soccer's over there, but they're bigger than hockey. It's bigger than baseball because of the NCAA and college. That's big time business, and that's a different level. But you get to play basketball in college, and you get to have a great time and use it to help your life. That's just what I meant about something like that. Maybe high school one day, but those parents, they're trying to get scholarships. See, that the parent thing has risen up to all levels. I think even in the pros, you just have to manage it. But I'm way different. I'm happy to talk to people, and you know, you just have to be more patient with this group. But there's a lot of talent in this generation. Don't give up on those young people.
He's Jimmy Patsos. We said it on the cover of Press Box about 10 years ago. He's crazy like a greyhound. Jimmy, thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it.
Gary, appreciate it. Stan, be interesting to see if there'll be a Lakers-Boston Celtics final. But I'll tell you what, those Heat are good. And that Denver team, Mike Malone.
He's a hell of a coach. I know he
played Loyola.
Played Loyola. The NBA final. The NBA has done a tremendous job. Watch down the stretch. The basketball is going to be great. And the Terps make the NCAA this year and win a tournament game.
You gotta work. You got to work on getting your energy level up.
I got to get my energy.
You got to bring it up a little bit.
Love you.
My Terps in there because the Terps are going to be good. When college basketball starts, I'll come back on. Thanks, Stan.
All right.
Good.
For
Thank
Gary
you.
Stein, I'm Stan the Fan Charles, and we'll see you next week. Marty Conway is going to join us, talk about sports business. Thanks, Jimmy Patsos. Good night.
Thank you, Jim.